My wife said she was pregnant, but I can't be a father because I'm infertile. Life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. For me, that curveball came in the form of my wife's pregnancy announcement. At first I was stunned, but that shock quickly turned to confusion and then to dread. You see, I knew I couldn't be the father. I'm infertile. Let me take you back to the beginning. I'm 38 years old, and my wife is 33. We've been married for 2 years, but we dated for 3 years before tying the knot. She was always the one pushing for marriage and a family, while I was more hesitant. Still, I loved her and wanted to make her happy, so I agreed. A year into our marriage, she brought up the idea of having a child. I wasn't entirely on board at first, but I eventually gave in, thinking it might bring us closer. We started trying, but month after month, nothing happened. The disappointment was palpable, and it started to strain our relationship. She became increasingly frustrated, and her frustration often turned into anger directed at me. I tried to stay calm and supportive, but deep down I was struggling too. The pressure became too much, and I decided to see a doctor. After a series of tests, I received the news that shattered me. I was infertile. The doctor explained that there was no chance I could father a child. I was devastated. Even though having kids wasn't originally my dream, I had started to imagine what it would be like to be a dad. The idea of never experiencing that broke my heart. But I couldn't bring myself to tell my wife right away. I was afraid of how she'd react. She had already become so volatile, and I didn't want to add fuel to the fire. A few days after receiving the diagnosis, she dropped a bombshell of her own. She sat me down, her face glowing, and said, "I have something important to tell you. I'm pregnant." My heart stopped. How could this be? I knew I wasn't the father. But she looked so happy, so I forced a smile and congratulated her. Inside, though, I was in turmoil. The next day, I went back to the doctor to double-check the results. They confirmed it again. I was infertile. There was no way the child was mine. That's when the pieces started falling into place. She must have cheated on me. We couldn't afford expensive fertility treatments, and I was the only one working. So she couldn't have gone behind my back to pursue that route. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt betrayed, angry, and heartbroken all at once. But I didn't confront her right away. I needed proof. I needed to know who the father was. Over the next few weeks, I started paying closer attention to her behavior. I noticed she was spending more time on her laptop, often turning the screen away when I walked into the room. She claimed she was working on a novel, but I had my doubts. One day, while she was out, I decided to check her laptop. It wasn't easy. I felt guilty invading her privacy, but I had to know the truth. What I found confirmed my worst fears. She had been exchanging emails with our neighbor, a 27-year-old aspiring model who lived across the street. Their messages were filled with declarations of love, and she had even told him about the pregnancy. He seemed less than thrilled, but she was determined to keep him in her life. The most damning email was one where she outlined her plan. She would stay with me until the baby was born, then file for divorce and demand alimony and child support. She wanted to use me to fund her new life with him. I was furious. Not only had she betrayed me, but she was also planning to manipulate me for money. I felt like a fool for not seeing it sooner. But instead of confronting her immediately, I decided to play along. I wanted to gather as much evidence as possible and make sure she couldn't twist the situation in her favor. For the next 9 months, I played the role of the doting husband. I attended every doctor's appointment, made sure she took her vitamins, and acted like I was over the moon about the pregnancy. It was exhausting, but I was determined to see this through. The day of the delivery finally arrived. I drove her to the hospital, my nerves on edge. When the moment came, I dropped the bomb. I showed her the results of my fertility tests and told her I knew about her affair. The look on her face was a mix of shock, fear, and guilt. I didn't stick around to hear her excuses. I called the neighbor, told him his girlfriend was in labor, and left the hospital. Since then, I've been living separately. She's tried to reach out, apologizing and begging for forgiveness, but I'm done. I've filed for divorce, and with the evidence I've gathered, I'm confident I won't be on the hook for alimony or child support. As for her and the neighbor, they're struggling. He's barely making ends meet as a model, and she's realizing the grass isn't always greener on the other side. In the end, I found a sense of peace. It was a painful journey, but I've come out stronger on the other side. I've learned to trust my instincts and to value myself more. Life may have thrown me a curveball, but I've learned how to hit it out of the park.